Good evening. So it is Wednesday, March 1st, and I am here to talk a little bit about the Ellick Murdock trial. If you saw it printed, you would say Alex Murdaugh. For some reason, it is Ellick Murdock in South Carolina. If you've been if you hadn't been following this, you probably wouldn't be watching me. But I am an attorney. I've been an attorney here in California for 16 years. I do not practice criminal law. I used to dabble in it a little bit. I am like Ellick. I'm a personal injury lawyer. That's what I've been doing for about the last 12 years. Hopefully the similarities between me and Ellick do not go much further than that. I do not profess to be an expert in criminal law. I don't profess to be any kind of expert in South Carolina law. I have tried jury cases. I do know a little bit of something about evidence, and I understand how to evaluate witness credibility, and I do know something about jury instructions. That said, I'm not here as any kind of a insider on this case. I'm here just as anybody else who's been watching all this stuff. This is right up my alley. I watch these kind of things all the time. And when you hear this about this story, you can't help but be interested in it due to just its crazy nature, everything that's happened with this Murdock family, the way they've been running their little fiefdom down there in the Low Country for the last 100 years. And then the spectacular downfall, which is what we're seeing here now. My opinions are based on watching probably about 5 to 10% of this trial. Nightly updates. I saw the Netflix series. I saw the HBO series. I saw Dateline, whatever else was on. My kids give me a bunch of crap because I'm always watching what they call my murder shows. Pretty much watch sports and the murder shows. That's what I like to watch on TV. I can't get enough of this story, like probably lots of you. Become a little bit emotionally invested, and I'll say I'm not unbiased. I've come to my opinion through my review of the facts of the case. I'm not unbiased now because I think Ellick is guilty as hell, and I really hope he gets convicted because I'm not a fan of murderers. That said, I think I've come to my conclusion by analyzing the facts, and I think if you really analyze the facts, you can't help but think that this guy did it. If you really don't think that this guy was involved in this, I don't understand why you would think that. I do understand why you think he might get off, or why he should get off legally, and I'll get to that a little bit more later. Why do I think he's guilty? If you're following this trial, you know that he flat out lied about being at the scene of the crime. His wife and his son are found dead. They ask him, when's the last time you saw them? And he lied about it. He lied about it over and over and over again until he got caught red-handed and couldn't deny it anymore. Then he came up with a story on the witness stand last week. In my opinion, that lie is enough to convict him on this case. Just that, alone. That's something a guilty person does. He has excuses for it. If you've been watching the trial, you know what those excuses are. I think they're ridiculous. It's something that you can't explain away. But there's more than that. Let's just back up a little bit on Ellick and lying. This guy might be one of the biggest liars you've ever heard of, and I said I'm a PI lawyer. I represent injured clients. It's what I do. I've been doing it, like I said, for 12 years. This guy has done some things that I just simply can't believe. Excuse me. Stealing from his disabled clients for years and years and years. Millions of dollars. Stealing from his own law partner. The worst thing, in my view, is what he did with his housekeeper and her family. Call her a housekeeper, but she was really a little bit more than that. By all accounts, she raised Paul, who's the murder victim here. And I'm not really sure about the other kid, Buster, but all accounts, she raised Paul. This guy and his wife paid this poor lady, Gloria Satterfield, $10 an hour to raise their kid. Sometimes her family was borderline homeless, on food stamps, living in a mobile home, while Ellick and his family are living a life of privilege, multiple homes, going to South Carolina baseball games, trips to the Caribbean, beach house, hunting lodge, and this guy's paying this lady $10 an hour to raise his kids for him and then send her home on a public city bus. He takes out a $4 million umbrella policy on his property. 60 days later, and by the way, all my facts might not be exactly right. If they're wrong, let me know. This is a summary. If you've been following this case, you know about all this already. 60 days later, she dies in a mysterious fall down the front stairs of his house. Tragic accident. No proof that Ellick was involved or anyone in his family. It's certainly interesting that he took out a $4 million insurance policy. It's certainly interesting that he immediately enlisted one of his best friends, another plaintiff's attorney, to represent Gloria Satterfield's family in suing himself, Ellick, and his family, so that they could get that $4 million that he had just covered himself with. So there's $4 million available, and Ellick helpfully hooks up the Satterfield family with his buddy. They settle the case. Great, right? He set him up for $4 million. He steals it all of it. They find out in the newspaper that their case was settled. What I'm getting at is this guy is the absolute scum of the earth. So that's my bias. I also think he murdered his wife and his son, but I'll get to that a little bit more in a minute. One of the guns that killed his wife, the blackout, it's basically proven that gun was one of his family guns, as everyone who's watching this knows. The shells that were found at the murder scene match other shells that we know had been shot by his family members out on the property months ago. There's no dispute about it. There's no other explanation for that other than these people were killed with a family gun. There's the timeline issues that no one can dispute. He's lied about all kinds of other things, little things. He tried to get his mother's caregiver to lie. Just a lot of things. I think the guy is guilty as can be. I don't really think, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but I don't really understand how you could think he didn't do it. There's all these defenses about, maybe it was the cartel, due to his alleged drug addiction. First of all, I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that this guy was spending $50,000 on oxycodone, opiates. It's physically impossible to take that much. I think it's probably physically impossible to spend $50,000 a month on that, let alone a week. The amount of pills he says he was taking, I've dealt with people before that had opioid injections. You would not be able to trick your law partners for years and years and years that everything was normal. None of these people thought he was a drug addict. None of them knew it. If you're taking that amount of pills, every now and then, you're just going to fall down onto the desk in a drooling mess. You can't avoid it. You cannot hide that. I think his drug addiction is just an excuse. You'll notice as soon as he got arrested, he checked into rehab. This is something that a lot of people do. Once they get caught, they try and blame everything on drugs. I think he was a drug abuser. Do I think he was this hardcore drug addict? No. Do I think that's the reason why he did any of this? No. Do I think the cartel was involved? Flatly, I think that's ridiculous. I don't know what his defense lawyers are going to say about that in closing argument. I suspect they're probably going to try and float it out there, although there was absolutely no evidence introduced at trial. I suspect they are going to vaguely float out the idea that some of the boat crash victims' family members may have been involved. No evidence of that either. Quite simply, there's really no alternative theory that makes any sense, that has any evidence behind it at all. And that's not something that a jury is supposed to think about, but they will. They're going to sit there in the jury room and say, okay, if Ellick didn't do this, then who did? And what information do we have that points that way? There's no proof that any of these boat crash victims ever made any threats, or anybody else made any threats to Paul or Ellick or anyone in his family ever. He never reported it to the sheriffs. That's another ridiculous tale that he tells, that he distrusted law enforcement. This guy was law enforcement in this area. He ran the town. He drove around with a badge, a fake badge, and a blue light in his car. And then he lied about how he got that, how he got permission to get that from the sheriff. It's just lie after lie with this guy. He piles them on, and he thinks that he can get everyone to believe him. I thought his testimony was ridiculous. I don't understand why anyone would believe a word that he said. I don't know if he's going to get convicted or not. A lot of people are saying they think there's reasonable doubt. Personally, I do not think there's reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt doesn't mean any doubt at all. The prosecution doesn't have to prove 100% that he did it. You can have some doubts, but they have to be reasonable. If you have an abiding conviction in his guilt, you vote guilty. And like I said, I really don't think you need anything more than his lies about being at the murder scene. There's absolutely no reason for him to lie about that if he didn't do it. Another thing that comes up a lot is, well, this is just circumstantial evidence. It's just a circumstantial case. I think a lot of people who say that don't understand the rules of evidence. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of people who go to prison every day on circumstantial evidence cases. There is not always an eyewitness. There's not always blood. There's not always DNA. I think since the OJ case and a lot of the CSI shows and everything, people expect that there's going to be this irrefutable scientific trail in every case. There isn't. Sometimes people are very good at trying to cover things up. And just because they do that doesn't mean they should get away with it. Circumstantial evidence is evidence. The fact that he lied about being at the crime scene is, yes, it's circumstantial evidence. Does that mean it's weak evidence? No. It's extremely strong evidence, in my opinion. Some of the other things that the defense will throw out there, and they do have some defenses. They have some good points. This 2 guns, it's certainly unusual that one person would use 2 guns to kill 2 people. There's no proof of this, but my theory on that is I think he did that on purpose to try and throw people off the trail. I don't know when he started planning this. No one's ever going to know. I think he did plan it. He came up with this cover story. He got Maggie and Paul to come to the farm. And I think if he thought if he could use 2 guns, he could get away with this because, hey, it must have been 2 shooters, right? Maybe these cartel guys, maybe the 5'2" cartel shooters, right? Yeah, that's something that maybe could plant reasonable doubt in some jurors' minds. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a hung jury. I'd be very surprised if he actually gets off because I have a very hard time thinking that 12 people could actually look at this and all 12 of them could say, no, this guy didn't do it. And I think the main reason for that is him himself. Juries are not supposed to take a defendant's character into deciding whether or not he's guilty. But what you can do is you can assess a witness's credibility. And if you think someone is a liar, you can choose not to believe them at all. And I think that's what they should do with this guy. I don't know how you could believe a word that he says ever at all. I saw a little bit of the prosecution's closing today. I thought, from what I saw, I thought the prosecutor, Waters, did a very good job. I saw some commentary about how he was going on too long. This is a 6-week murder trial with 2 victims killed in cold blood. Paul Murdock may not have been the greatest guy in the world in life, but I'm not going to speak ill of the dead. Had his head blown off, allegedly by his own dad. And then the guy blows away his own wife with a family gun. So I would like to think that a jury can sit there for 6 or 7 hours and listen to closing arguments in a case like this. This is not Dateline NBC or the Oxygen Network where everything has to be wrapped up in an hour. And I think the victims deserve a full airing of all the facts and all the evidence and for everyone to pay attention and decide whether this guy did it or not. I thought the prosecutor did a very good job. I've never really been impressed with the defense attorneys in this case. Don't remember which is which. I think it was Griffin who went on HBO and parroted Ellick's alibi, which was a complete lie. I don't really understand how he can continue to represent him under these circumstances. Either he knows his client was lying before or he found out later. It's rather awkward, and I really couldn't believe that he was going on HBO with a criminal case pending to give this whole timeline story. And then I believe the other defense attorney, Harpootlian, I think people call him Poot. Not really impressed with him as an advocate. He's supposed to be this super lawyer down in South Carolina. I really don't see it. Maybe he's past his prime. But if I'm not mistaken, he was Paul Murdock's defense attorney on the boat case. And now he's representing the person who's alleged to have murdered his client. I mean, did he just roll the retainer over? I don't know if that's unethical or not. I guess it's not. Not something I would do. Seems kind of skeezy. We'll see what he comes up with tomorrow. So that's my take on Ellick. Go ahead and let me know what you think. If I don't know what I'm talking about, I probably said a lot. I've never done this before. Let me know what you think. Thanks.